What's up, everyone? Thanks for dropping in. Dr. Jessica Rabon, the third Dr. J.
Woo!
How would you categorize the current state of youth mental health?
Wow. That's a big question. I would say that despite people talking about it more and the stigma reducing, it is still in a very poor place.
That's so well said, and we'd expect nothing less from Dr. Jess right off the jump. Thanks so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about how you work professionally with youth.
Yes, thanks for asking. So I work in a children's hospital. So half of my time is spent outpatient in our adolescent medicine clinic. So we see anybody from 10 to 25. Majority of my clients are adolescents, like teenage years. And then the other half, I work medical inpatient. And there I technically work with all age ranges, but primarily I would say 10 to 17. And those individuals are medically hospitalized. So usually they are there for some type of medical illness, trauma, and I am there to provide mental health support for whatever they are going through.
So that would be more time limited, right?
Yes. So on the inpatient side, it is limited to however long they are in the hospital. I would say on average, I probably only see kids and teens 2 to 4 sessions inpatient, some longer because some people are hospitalized for months, but then outpatient, it's more traditional therapy where I'm seeing people longer term for months, if not years.
I would imagine a lot of ways, and maybe we're biased because we work in private practice where you can see people as long as they want to be seen. What are some of the challenges that come with sort of that brief inpatient, you said between 2 or 4 sessions?
I would say there's a lot of challenges. The first one is, you have to establish rapport real quick. My initial assessment is similar to outpatient, gathering history, things like that, why they're in the hospital. But oftentimes I will try to do an intervention on the first session as well, which outpatient I may not necessarily do because I know we have more time. I think another challenge is really focusing on why they are there and what is going on in the moment. Because, going back to your first question, Justin, of like the state of mental health, and I do feel like it is poor overall, and we can get into all those reasons. And so I'll have patients come into the hospital, and maybe they're there for, a chronic illness, and I'm consulted for coping with anxiety related to their chronic illness, but then they have this significant trauma history, or they have a history of depression, or these other things. And I don't have necessarily the time to be able to dive into all of those things. So it has to be very solution focused in many ways. I would say the third challenge is they can just leave one day and not they could leave against medical advice, but once their medical treatment is done, they're discharged. So, there's been times that I'm like, hey, we'll follow up, Thursday when I'm back, in the hospital, and they discharge Wednesday. And I never really get that ending session with them or really to wrap up things like I know a lot of times we like to do in the mental health world.
Having to supercharge sort of your influence in such a brief period of time, God, that's got to be a skill that you develop over time to meet them where they're at and try to be as helpful as possible. Have you noticed things you've learned in sort of being as helpful as possible or connecting quickly that maybe people in other professions, teachers, whoever, who don't feel like they have all the time in the world like we do, over here in private practice, tricks, tips of how do you connect with someone that quickly?
So when I start an intake, especially in the hospital, I will minus introducing myself, all that kind of stuff. I always say, I bet you've been asked a million questions about why you are here. I want to start to get to know you outside of the hospital. And so I'll always ask about like, demographics, who they live with, but like hobbies, interests, things they enjoy. And then I really try to build upon that. One thing I love about working in a hospital is I have so many different professions with me. And so we have child life, for example. And so if I'm working with a client and they're like, oh, I really like art, or I'm really interested in Legos, then I can give a handoff to child life and say, hey, they're really interested in this. And I'll tell them like, hey, I will, ask if we can do those things. So really connecting on interests. And then also, like I said, at the beginning, giving like one or two skills. And, I go to some of those, skills we all know: guided visualization, diaphragmatic breathing. But if you give them a skill right away, I have found, assuming they are receptive to psychology involvement, they're like, okay, this person is trying to help me, not from a medical standpoint. Let me try this skill. They're going to come back tomorrow or the next day to check in. And just remembering those things and starting every session of like, how's the hospital been? I validate. It's not fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, have you gone outside? Yeah, it's super boring. I probably make fun of our food in the hospital more than my patients do. But I'm like, how's lunch? And they're like, it's gross. I'm like, yeah, I probably wouldn't eat that either. Assuming that that's an appropriate thing to say. Obviously, I see eating disorders. I would not say that to them. But, a lot of times like youth and teens, they, like humor. They like to see that you're a person. And so if I can connect with them on their interests and then incorporate that into treatment, I have found that has really helped establish that rapport really quickly.
Totally. I'm so curious, how receptive are they usually to psychology?
So I would say the majority are receptive. I have had to perfect this. I don't like that word, Justin. Perfection. over the years. So now I do ask the medical team, like, hey, can you let them know psychology is coming? That has helped. But I have found if I word it in a way of, hey, I'm Dr. Rabon, I'm one of the pediatric psychologists here. I usually ask them, like, do they know what a psychologist is? But then I just say, the team wanted me to come by because you're in the hospital, you've been dealing with a lot of stuff, and I'm just here to be an extra layer of support. Is it okay if we chat? And wording it like that, it's very rare I get pushback. There's sometimes parents are like, wait, why is psychology involved? Do you think my child is crazy? And that goes to stigma. But most often they're really receptive to it because being in a hospital is really stressful.
Yeah.
And
I think especially when you frame it that way and you give them that autonomy and that control of like, are you open to this? And is this something that I can help you with support in these ways? And giving them that option and that choice, I think gives them a lot of autonomy and freedom, especially in situations where they probably don't feel like they have very much.
Oh, absolutely. And another thing I tell my patients a lot too, especially if they've been in therapy, I'm like, this is not like outpatient therapy where we have a scheduled 45 or 60-minute session. I'll come by when I can. If you're up for talking, we can talk for as long as short as you want. If you're not up for talking, just let me know you're not up for talking today. And I think exactly like you were saying, Jackie, that gives them the autonomy and some control over their life because they're most often stuck in a room or at least stuck in the hospital. And a lot of their autonomy has been taken away.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Your days are filled with interacting with the youth. Like in a given week, not to put like a number on it, but I'm just curious, how many different youth clients under the age of 18 will you interact with?
So outpatient, I have 16 clients a week. And then inpatient, it will depend on our census. I think right now I have like 6 or 7 on my census, but you have to remember I'm there 2.5 days. So I will see those patients usually multiple times. So say we'll just say 6 for ease and say so 16 plus another, if I did 3 sessions with all of them, I can't do math, 18 plus 16, 34 interactions a week. So I would say 30 is probably a pretty average number.
You're having these intimate interactions that we know as psychologists we lean into, and you alluded to sort of how you go about that. But you also mentioned at the top of the show that I want to circle back to, that overall you feel like youth mental health is in a bad place, or certainly could be better. What are the factors that are contributing to that?
I think social media and our screens are a huge one. And, social media, and we could probably have a whole episode on this. There's the comparison factor. There's the evaluating your worth off of likes and follows and clicks and all that kind of stuff. It's the fact that they're attached to their phone so much. And even though so many of my clients do have online friends, and I mean, hello, like we're sitting here, we all met, well, you two didn't meet online. I met you all online, but they're not interacting with peers in the same way. And like online connections are really important, but we know we need that face-to-face interaction. So that's a big one. I feel like a lot of them are like lonely and isolated. I saw this huge shift after the pandemic, like during the pandemic of isolation, because they were all taken out of schools. And schools was their main point of interaction. I feel like we're getting better, but like I still see a number of youth who are in online school. They just continued it from the pandemic. And although from an academic aspect, for many of them, that actually works really well because they're really bright and can get their schoolwork done in like 3 hours and then have a part-time job or, do whatever else. They are very isolated. Another factor I hear about, and I say this all the time, like Gen Z is so much more informed about things that I was never informed about, like sociopolitical climate, which goes, I think, into social media and things like that. But I see that as well. Like they are getting all this information all at once. They're scrolling social media, seeing all these things that make them feel bad. I mean, we all probably can relate, even though we're adults as well. So I think the sociopolitical climate is one. And I've also noticed just a lot of like pressure on them, especially academically. Like I hear the number of AP classes my clients are taking, or like the need to get all like 96 and above, and taking the SAT. And I mean, I took the SAT twice, but I've had patients take the SAT and ACT multiple upon multiple times to get that score, to get into college, and, doing all the extracurriculars. And I mean, I remember feeling like, oh, I need to do well to get into college, but like, I don't ever remember feeling the pressure to have to take like 6 AP classes.
Did we even have AP classes? Or I think that just goes to show the state of where I was at in high school.
I don't know what they were doing over there in New York, but in corn country, Ohio, we had AP.
Well, I'm sure we did too. Clearly, I was not in that.
We're going to ask your parents after this. Like, where was Dr. Jackie?
In high school?
Probably somewhere that they could not track me at the time.
There was none of that app that tracks all your whereabouts.
Yeah.
What's that called?
Not Find My Friend.
No, there's like one that you can like track everything, right?
Gosh, I'm just blanking on the name of it right now. I'll think of it later. But yeah, it's the app that they put on all the use phones nowadays, and for pros and cons. And to circle back, because you listed a lot of different points in there. One that is talked about a lot is the technology, and it's not going to go anywhere. And the technology is including social media, but there is more and more schools turning, towards this like phoneless approach of like, you come in, you put your phone in a special pouch. One of my clients was sort of taking me through the whole process that their school just switched to. What are your thoughts on that? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Is it prolonging the inevitable of just having screens everywhere else?
So South Carolina actually implemented a no cell phone rule beginning of this year. So this is their second semester having it. And at first I was like, okay, I can get it from like a distraction standpoint. But then my mind goes to like, well, what if there's an emergency and somebody needs to contact their parents? But from what I've gathered from at least how it's implemented in my state, it's like they're allowed to have it like at lunch and like in the hallways or a free period, but just like not in class. And honestly, like with that more balanced approach, I feel like that's appropriate, like minimizing distractions, but also like not being on social media. Like I didn't even mention like cyberbullying and things like that. I do wonder about like if there was some type of emergency, you know, my mind's going to school shootings just given recent events, you know, what is the, you know, protocol for that, especially the ones that like have to put it in a bag or like don't have access to it. But I also find it ironic because I don't know about in Florida. In South Carolina, everybody has work on Chromebooks. So they're still looking at a screen for most of the day. Like it's very rare that I hear my teens talk about writing notes. And I know websites are blocked and stuff like that. But I mean, I would, you know me, I like research. I would like to look at the data to see what it says after we track this over time. But my gut says the benefits probably outweigh the risks. Because like, even if you're getting off your phones for the, 6-hour school day, I mean, you're not attached to a screen, you're not distracted, you're actually learning, and you're like forced to take time away from your phone. So it can reduce like FOMO or kind of that addiction to being on a phone. I don't know. Do you all have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think overall I can get it. Like if the goal of being at school is to learn, then why would reducing distractions be a bad thing? I also, because we talked about this when we were not recording, as we debate things all the time between the two of us, there's part of me that's like, we grew up in the era where no one could get a hold of you. But the most common thing hear is exactly what you said, Dr. Jess, which is, what if there's an emergency? I'm like, what do you mean? That's what we did in the early 2000s, the 90s, and the 80s. And like, you just went to someone's house, you asked for help. But I agree, because my mind defaults to of like, well, that's the reason why I need my phone. But I just wonder in the actual practice, and again, it'd be really hard to collect data on this. It's like, are we actually safer in having our phone? Or does the net of having access and phone cause more accidents, more distraction, sort of almost harm us more? And I don't have the answer here, but it's something we've debated.
I think those are great points. And like, as you were talking, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess if there was an emergency when we were in elementary school, especially, like, I don't know, they would call on the landline. I don't know.
I used to like use the payphone at school. Like, ew, that I'm dating us that far. But
did you know the trick with that? The trick was like, we would do like a collect call home, and like my parents would decline it, knowing that just meant come pick me up.
That's so funny.
It cost us $0. They're gonna come after me now that they heard this. Like, all these years, you owe us $65.
The saddest part that I like remember getting a phone in high school. Like, I remember texting my dad to pick me up from detention. And that was like the only thing that I can remember using my phone for in high school, because like it was like the old flip phones that like you weren't really doing a ton of things on other than like calling people or like texting by pushing 6 different buttons in a row, trying to get to the right number and letter and all the things. So it's so funny. Like, it's such a different contrast considering like what our experience with phones in school was versus what they are now with like social media and just being connected in all the ways. But I think in a lot of ways it can be helpful to have all of this information at your fingertips, but also very, very overwhelming when you're inundated by constant news and all of the things like you were saying, right? They're being inundated all day long by social media, by the headlines, by tragedy. And that's just the norm for them.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, there's all those jokes and memes online like I'm, you know, tired of being a millennial living through yet another unprecedented event. But if we think about like Gen Z, especially like the teenagers that were born in like mid to late 2000s, I know if we're gonna like age it, Justin's eyes just got wide, but like that's all they know.
Right.
Like, so they're not unprecedented events, but like, yeah, you just hear. And I also think, and this is a broader conversation, not just applying to youth, but we've also seen over the years, like media headlines have gotten more like clickbaity and drastic because of social media and the algorithm. So like, yeah, like you said, Jackie, they can't escape it. They're inundated. And I mean, we are too, but then you think of like the adolescent brain and developing mind and, you know, what all this information is doing to them. Their frontal lobe's not fully developed. So can they even, you know, decipher what is real is what is not, you know, social media literacy, when to know to put down the phone. Can they put down the phone because their whole life is connected in that phone? So there's so many layers to it.
Within the topic of social media certainly gets demonized a lot. It gets sort of harped on and focused. And it's not to say it shouldn't, but I'm wondering, what are the youth saying to you about social media with the context that you're putting out there that for most of them, social media has always been there?
So it's very rare I have a teen client that's not on social media. I have had a few. And I'm always like, I'm so
shocked,
impressed with you. Or they'll be like, I have some, but I like post my prom pics once a year. Like, I'm like, cool. So I would say most of them meet people online. A lot of it, especially my LGBTQ youth, find it very helpful to connect with other LGBTQAI individuals. So I do think there's positives in that, especially if you are from a marginalized community and in an area that maybe you don't have that in-person support, that can be helpful. I also know that they go to social media to find things. Like the amount of my clients that will be like, I found a TikTok about this, and, you know, or I was looking up on TikTok how to do this. And like, I appreciate that at least they'll tell me. And it is funny when they like show me a video and I'm like, oh, I know that person. I don't say that. I'm like, okay, cool. But I also know that like they recognize there's negative aspects to it. Like I can think of multiple clients I've talked to about just like friendship fallouts because of the text-based relationship and not understanding tone or what they mean. I talked with clients about like how we all feel like we need to immediately respond. And if somebody doesn't respond, what does that mean? Do they not like me? Did something bad happen? So I think youth do realize it's also a mixed bag, but I think more so than even our generations, like taking content creation out of it, like they are so tied into the internet because that's where their friends are. That's where they get updates about what's going on in school. That's where they get their news. That's where they like chat GPT, or that's where they go to find out about mental health, to find out about medical conditions, to find out their cooking recipe. Like everything is on the little device in their hands. I don't even know if that answered your question, Justin, but yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely did. And it paints, you know, sort of the broad picture. And gets to the point that their lives are being lived through these for most of them. I know with my teen clients, it's that way. It's like they're snapping all their friends. Instagram is becoming more and more for us elder millennials. Don't even mention Facebook. Facebook's for like 60 plus, I feel like, with the teens I treat. But to your point, they're meeting people that way. They're organizing, they're expressing themselves. And part of me in this challenge is like, you can get the generational differences with parents, meaning that parents will be like, my kid's always on their phone. They're always on this social media. What do you think the bridge is there? Or maybe what are some of the conversations you have with parents about sort of like, can we completely take away social media? Can we completely take away the phone? I know this is sort of a nuanced thing, but a lot of people wonder about that.
Yeah. I mean, and I've had so many different conversations depending on the situation. So like some, it's very direct. Like you need to be monitoring their usage, depending on what's going on, or if the teen is getting into trouble or behaviors they shouldn't be engaged in. And I'll say to the teen, I know you don't like what I'm about to say. Like you're not going to like it. And you need to be safe. For others, I bridge it more from a like connection standpoint. Like you were saying, you say your teen is always on their phone. What are your phone behaviors like? Are you also modeling this? Is there a time once a week or every other week, depending on your schedules, that you all can do a connecting activity that doesn't involve your phones? And, a lot of times families are open to that, assuming like they have a good relationship. But I do talk to parents a lot about like modeling that. And I noticed that within myself. I don't know if you all notice that. Like I'll be checking my phone at dinner and then I'm like, oh, my kids are sitting here. Like I need to not be on my phone. And I think also just some education with parents, like psychoeducation about like, yes, they are on their phone all the times, but you have to remember that is their social connection. That is where they're watching movies or TV shows. That is where they are listening to music. That is where they are, not that they're paying bills, but like they do everything on their phones. And like I've had that conversation with families as well, because in the hospital, we can't take electronics from patients, but parents are allowed to take them. And, parents a lot of times will be like, I want to take it as, a punishment for whatever, or they're spending too much time on their phone. And we talk about like, at least in the hospital where it's structured, giving them some time where they can connect with their friends. Because a lot of teens are like, if you take my phone, you're taking my friends. You're taking my coping skills of watching movies. Or like, have you all seen those like art apps where it's like basically like a paint by number? Yep. But yeah, Jackie knows what I'm talking about. I have teens do that. And they're like, if you take these things from like, you're literally taking.
Yeah, that's my coping.
All my stuff. And so I think it is a balance, but for any parent, I would encourage conversations like, how are you using your phone? And I have found like the teens that aren't hiding things from their parents, the teens that have like open communication with their parents aren't the ones I'm hearing are like, oh, they're on their phone all the time, because they're like showing mom, dad, grandma. They're like, oh my gosh, look at this thing, or did I show you this picture, and things like that. So there's a way to connect with the phone as well.
God, I can remember that being my like punishment was my phone getting taken away. I didn't quite have those exact excuses at the time because we didn't have social media or any of those games or anything like that. But I remember that being like the discipline. And I feel like now it would be a very different beast taking away a phone, right? Because exactly what you're saying, for a lot of teens, that is their coping, that's their music, that's their ASMR stuff, that is all of the things that actually do help regulate them in a lot of ways. And I think sometimes we forget about that. We just assume that like they're just always on their phones and like being distracted or only on social media. And it's like, maybe it's not just that.
That's why I like what you put out there, Jess, of like emphasizing, the reflective question of how are you connecting with them? Because I feel like maybe it's just what's on my feed, but I feel like there is sort of this whiplash of people wanting more like in-person connections, like the rise in people going to like Pokemon card shows again and like trading in person and sort of getting out of this. Every single thing I do and interface with is just like online and online only. But I think as a parent, I'm like self-reflecting. It's like, what are the opportunities like I'm giving my son to do something engaging, fun, that is screenless? Magnetiles 24/7.
We love Magnetiles in our house as well.
Oh,
Well, and
So do we.
yeah, I mean, they're great. And that's going back to like, coping in the hospital and stuff. And, child life does way more than like bring normative activities. So I want to emphasize that. But like, we do try really hard. Like, let's do some arts and crafts. Let's do things off your screen, because a lot of teens, I know we're talking about teens, I would say adults too, we don't have many activities that aren't on our screens. I mean, I'm even thinking like, when I'm exercising, like I'm not staring at a screen, but you can pull up an exercise video and stare at the screen, but I'm playing music on my phone. Like,
Right.
We're always, attached to our cellular devices. And, I think asking about how they're using their phone and different ways they can connect, or even like, I think of things, you go on a hike, but then you want to take pictures. So like your phone is there. It's a camera. We didn't even mention that. Back when we first started having cell phones, it was not a camera. It's a calculator. Like I think about that all the time. How many math teachers did you have? Like you need to learn this off by memorize this because you're not going to have a calculator on it. Like it's their wallet, Apple Pay, like everything is on the phone.
There's no answer to this, but this is when I think of like, you're talking to people who are going to be here, especially I read something the other week that was like Gen Z and Gen Alpha are going to be the first generation that routinely live past 100.
Wow.
Like they are going to be here for so long. Like part of me wonders, it's like, are we going down a direction that just is bad for the human species, period? Or are we going to evolve? Is this just going to be another adaptation that we go through? Again, I don't expect you to have the answer here, but are you concerned more than you're not with teens? Does it bounce back and forth?
I think it depends. Yeah, it depends. And I think it depends on what we're talking about. If I'm thinking of like screen, cell phone, that kind of use, I do worry about where we're going, because I just can reflect on my own use over the years. And like we talked about, we didn't grow up with these things, but teens have. And I'm thinking that in the sense of like outside time, we know that being outside is so beneficial. And like, yes, you can be outside on your phone, but then we're not being present. And I do see that a lot, talking with teens of, luckily a lot of them do still like outdoor activities, but a lot of them are like, oh, I play video games or I watch movies. Like there's no movement, there's no outdoor activities. And that part worries me. But there's other parts that I'm like, but if this is the new normal, what is, cell phone use or internet use or social media use even going to look like in 20 years? Because it's already changed so much since because we're the first generation to really get social media. Like MySpace, I'm pretty sure is obsolete. I don't think LiveJournal, Zanga, like all of that kind of stuff even exists anymore. So who's to say that social media is even going to be a thing? Maybe there'll be a shift and people get so tired of only interacting online that I don't know. I think yeah.
I was going to say, if MySpace still existed, I'm just going to flat out say it. Babe, you would be number 3, just number 2. Number 1 will remain a mystery.
Green Beeb.
It would be BB-8, my Pomeranian. at the top, number one.
It would not be Tom.
Yeah, putting Tom at the top. I love that people are going to listen to this and be like, I have
Who?
no idea,
No idea.
what they're talking about.
Who's Tom?
The top 8 on MySpace. There's still people going to therapy for that. They're like, I've never gotten over, I was dating this guy for years and I was number 5 on his top 8.
Yeah. But you think of that, like, I mean, I know we're kind of joking, but like, I remember that, like, you know, oh my gosh, so-and-so's in their top 5 or whatever. And then now social media, like,
Right. You can't have a snap streak end, or like, yeah, the Snapchat stuff is just a whole ecosystem that I get let into. Every teen client I have about streaks and, you know, who their top friends are and all the things.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot on this podcast about AI, and I feel like it's just all the rage right now because it is growing so rapidly. How do you think AI today is impacting the youth? Oh,
How long
we
do we
tapped
have?
into something
Loaded
good.
question.
We hit something good, Jackie.
So, I mean, the amount of teens I have that have told me they use AI for their schoolwork, for their homework. Like, so in that sense, I do worry about like the learning aspect. And when they go off to college, what are study skills going to look like? Things like that. I have not had any clients that I'm aware of tell me they've used AI for therapy. But I do worry about that because of what I've read with regard to AI, just kind of reflecting back, and with teens being so vulnerable, especially teens that are seeking AI for mental health. It does worry me in that way. But yeah, I mostly, from a standpoint of AI, worry about like the academic aspect of things, because I can't even tell you the amount of teens that are like, oh yeah, I just used ChatGPT for this. And like, you know, obviously my job is not to judge or anything, but it does concern me. Like, what does learning look like? What is it going to be like when they get into college, get into jobs? And I know we're talking about teens. I see adults use it too for things as well.
Valid.
And I also don't think we know enough about AI to know how it's going to impact mental health overall. I have my own concerns with AI in general. I can also see the benefits of AI in other domains. And I think, you know, depending on how it's utilized, it could help. It could also hurt.
Yeah, there's a lot of the concerns that we've sort of discussed of like, because we can't go back in time to get sort of people our age's reaction when Google came out and sort of like the internet. And so there's always a part of me that like just doesn't want to become this curmudgeon who is just like someone 30 years ago, like basically history repeating. But I also think the differences between Google and AI are huge and massive. Where it really comes down to AI will do things for you that Google would tell you something, but you had to write the essay. You had to, you know, make the logo, and, you know, the amount of things that AI is doing is expanding so rapidly. Part of me wonders, what is this next generation going to do for careers?
That's very valid.
I
don't know.
And I don't know if you get to this because, especially, you know, if someone's dealing with a physical ailment and they're going through real difficult mental health time, it's like you're not necessarily getting to the point of like, hey, have you thought about what career you might or what college you might go to? But in any of those conversations that you have, do you have any sense of what youth are interested in career-wise?
So the youth that see me, either, and this is an overgeneralization, a lot do want to go into like psychology, social work, or like a helping field.
Love
nursing,
it. Not biased at all.
OT. No, but I'm like, that kind of makes sense. Like, either I've met you in a hospital,
Right.
You have a chronic illness, it makes sense that you would want to go to healthcare, or I've been seeing you in therapy, it makes sense that you would want to go into psychology or social work. outside of that, I have recently, actually, I was thinking about this, so I'm glad you brought it up, noticed an uptick in people that really have no idea what they want to do. And these are like not 12-year-olds I'm asking. These are 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And, you know, we could argue, is that, you know, depression? Are there other barriers or other factors that are at play? But I have noticed recently an increase of people just kind of like, you know, I like this, but I really have no idea what I want to do. Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, I have some random people will say like engineering, but like mostly it's like helping professions.
Yeah,
But that's
it's
probably
interesting
my
because it makes
population.
me think too of even like going to college, right? Like I feel like a lot more of today's youth is kind of questioning, is that something that I want to do or not? Whereas for our generation, I feel like it was kind of, no, that's what you're doing. That's the next step that's kind of expected of you. And if you don't go and get a degree, then you're never going to get a job and you're never going to have a career. And it was kind of like, if you didn't do this next step, then you were completely like messing up your future, essentially. And now I feel like it's actually more questioned by today's youth, which is interesting, right? They're like, well, why do I actually need to get a degree to do the thing that I want to do when I can actually learn these skills and learn these tools or build a business without doing, you know, all of these extra years and putting myself in debt and, you know, all those different steps. And I think it's really kind of cool that they're even questioning some of those aspects of what it is that they want to do. Because I don't know, I don't know how your experience was, but for me, it was like, you're going to college, the end.
Oh, absolutely. I love that you brought that up because I have also noticed that. I've also noticed, so I'm sure this happens in other states as well, but a lot of the high schools where I live have programs where your junior and senior year, you can like half-time learn a trade. And so, you know, a lot of teen girls I've worked with do like cosmetology. I've had people do welding or automotive. And so then they graduate high school with a diploma and a certificate. And like for some, they might have to do some extra classes or, you know, get licensure, but they're starting their careers at 18, 19. Thinking about, you know, over the years, all the teens that I've worked with as they graduated, if I had to guess, I would say at least 1/3, if not a half, decided not to go to college and are doing careers. Like it's not like they're, I mean, some of them are working part-time jobs, they're still trying to figure out, but like a lot of them, whether that's because they did a certificate program in high school or they found a career that doesn't require a college degree. I've also noticed an uptick of Gen Z doing community college first to save money. So they'll go do 2 years of community college, and then if they want to transfer to a 4-year university, they will. But yeah, I think it's a lot of like pushing back, questioning, you know, if this is what I want to do and it doesn't require that degree, why would I do it? Or even vocalizing, like I've had a number of teens vocalize, like, I don't like school. Why would I force myself to go to college? Where I don't know about you all. Like, I definitely knew kids that didn't like school, but they were like, but my parents are telling me I have to go to college. So here I am.
Can't relate to that.
We're learning so much about Dr. Jackie's delinquent youth that I know full well. I know that full narrative.
This episode is actually about Jackie.
Yeah. 100%. Gosh, you know, it's funny because like overall, I feel like it sounds empowering, but it sounds like, you know, just adapting to the changes in careers and what we do as humans. And yet there's a small part of me that, and I'm super biased in this, but I'm like, what about all that socialization and just tomfoolery. This is
Mhm.
the whitest thing I've ever said in my life, by the way. But like all the riff and raff that goes on when you go to a 4-year school, I don't know. And
Mhm.
I'm just putting that out there that like it's so highly social. Again, if you
Mhm.
have a traditional, which of course not everyone has, but if you have that traditional college experience, I feel like a lot of things I take away from those 4 years for me had nothing to do with academics.
Agreed. Yeah.
And I don't know where
Yeah.
that leads us by any means, but it's just something that I guess part of my heart aches of like, we're just becoming more and more isolated. And this is another example. And that might not be true at all.
I mean, I'll give you one example that's actually kind of exciting and hopefully just something that, yeah, makes us feel better about the youth, right? I had a client that I was talking to recently that they were telling me that school was actually their favorite thing ever. Like they enjoyed school more than summers because summers felt understimulating. Like they weren't learning, they weren't socializing as much, they weren't seeing their friends, and actually being in school is something that they look forward to. And I was
Mhm.
like, I love this. Like, one, I wish I had that perspective when I was in high school because clearly I think we all know that that was not my lens. But it was very encouraging to hear that from someone who is currently in high school, like looking at that lens.
Mhm. I love that, Jackie. And I will say, now that you said that, I do have a number of clients that, even if they're like, I don't love the academics or it is stressful, they love the structure. They might complain about getting up, but they love, the socialization with friends. I have a number of clients currently like who have set really good social goals for this like academic year, like going to more football games, being involved in like, our spirit weeks. I definitely didn't have this in high school. Spirit weeks are like huge in the city I work in, like rival high schools. Like they have week long, they raise like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And like, yeah, it's wild and like ends with a giant football game. So there's like events and stuff. And so I definitely see that as well, Jackie, for a subgroup of people because it is their socialization. It is their structure. Getting out of the house, going back to what you were saying, Justin, about just like isolation. I do think us as a whole society have become more isolated, and school is like a natural place to socialize and be around others.
Despite all these challenges we've outlined that again are no fault to this next generation, they were created by, either our generation or above us, Gen X, baby boomers. Despite all these challenges we've outlined, what gives you hope about this next generation?
Oh, I say this all the time. Gen Z is going to change the world. Like they are so like involved just in so many things. Like whether that be politics, like wanting to learn more. I think, going to something Jackie said earlier about like questioning things. Like they're not afraid as a whole to like challenge authority or stand up for what they believe in. And I know we talked a lot about the like negative aspects of social media, but I feel like that could be a positive, like getting your message out more or seeing other teenagers do the same things or like, oh, they're doing or speaking a language I speak, or they're standing up for what I believe in. And so that gives me hope. The other thing that we haven't really touched on other than my first comment when you asked me that question, I do think they're breaking down stigma when it comes to mental health. I do think there's a lot of barriers they're facing, the ones we've talked about. One that I didn't touch on that comes up a lot is just like financial. Like I'm 18 and I can't afford to move out of my house, or like they're worried about their parents' finances or things like that. But they're talking about it. Like the amount of clients I've had that have told me like, oh yeah, I was talking to my friends the other day and then I was like, oh my gosh, this is something I need to tell my therapist. And I'm like, do you say that out loud? And they're like, yeah, we all talk about our therapists. And I'm like, that's so cool. Or like the times I've had clients get calls in session, they're like, hold on, and they'll like text me like, I can't talk, I'm in therapy. High school me never would have done that. Like none, I think my best friend knew I was in therapy, and that was it. And like, I love that. That gives me hope that even with the bears, even with all of these things external to them that are negatively impacting their mental health, they're at least talking about mental health and breaking down that stigma so that hopefully more people will seek care if accessible to them.
They're so involved. They're so knowledgeable. And again, they're using that knowledge, not just like in a trivial pursuit kind of way, but again, speaking about things so eloquently. I'm like, my gosh, like it's so impressive that the advocacy, the caring, and to me, that's like, that has to equate to attachment and values. Because I don't know how you formulate these, eloquent sentences that are so hard hitting and, poignant if you're not also self-reflecting on your own personal values. And I'm like, talk about crap I never did as a teenager. Never.
Right. Absolutely.
I feel like they're so aware in this really incredible way that they really will like truly foster so much change because, they're like, I feel fully justified in demanding this certain level of respect. And I'm like, damn right. Full send.
Which sort of leads me to, gosh, if there's a teen out there listening to this, Jess, and they're feeling misunderstood or maybe isolated, what is it you'd want to say to them?
This is cliche, but you're not alone in feeling that way. I have worked with, hundreds, if not thousands at this point, but that makes me feel real old saying that, teens over the years. And I think a lot of times they feel like they're the only one experiencing what they're going through. They're the only one struggling with this. There's a lot of social comparison, and they're like, well, those people have friends, or they do this, or they do that. And I promise you that like whatever you're going through, yes, no two people have the same exact experiences, but you're not alone in that. And with that, like if there's even just one friend that you can connect with, or like one activity or hobby you can start doing to make you feel good, picking up art, journaling, playing an instrument, going outside for a walk. Like I think a lot of times we underestimate the power of those small things. We underestimate the power of connection a lot too. But once you realize you're not alone, and that even though there are so many things outside of your control that are probably impacting your mental health, there are things within your control that you can start doing to make you feel even just slightly better.
I love everything about that, for sure. And completely unrelated, but I would say of utmost importance, what was your favorite part of attending our wedding?
I love this question.
The real heavy-hitting questions.
Seeing you all in person for the first time in a year and a half at that point.
Yeah.
I know it was so fun. I did not love that we booked really early morning flights the next day and had to get up
gone.
we had to get down at 3:30 a.m. Your wedding didn't end till well, we didn't go to the after party midnight, 12:30. I was like, this was poor planning. No, it was everything was great about it. Dancing, the music, Justin was, on point, but no. 12 out of 10.
It was the only thing I was responsible for. It was the one thing. Jackie literally did everything else and did such an amazing job. But
no, it was awesome. Your friends were awesome. Like Spence and I have talked about that. Just like, going in only knowing you all. Well, and Julio. But like, it was great. So I say everything. I know and Barb. I should have just said Barb. Barb was my favorite.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, Barb's my mom, and she's just a gem. Everyone loves Barb all the time, and why wouldn't you? But yeah, shout out Riviera Maya, Mexico is just a fabulous place.
To everything. The band. What was the band the first night? That was the three tenors that was singing.
They entertain you. The entertainment, the service, the everything down there is just
next level.
Next level.
Yeah.
Like the absolute best.
It was great. It was great.
Let the people know. How can they follow you? Where should they tune in?
All the things. So on social media, Instagram and TikTok are where I'm posting most at Jessica Lee, PhD. Lee is Leigh. I have links to everything on Instagram, so you can go there. And then my podcast is Psych Talk, and you can get that wherever you get podcasts.
Tune into Psych Talk. You're going to get way more science, data, good, accurate information than this very subpar podcast over here. Yo, it's always good seeing you. I'd prefer to see you in the real world, but most of our relationship has been virtual world. But you always bring such a breadth and depth of knowledge and, again, great insights into any conversation.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for having me on. I've missed you all. It was nice to connect in this way again.
Yeah, thanks for hanging.
Come in, drop in anytime, Jess. And for all you listeners out there, again, go follow Dr. Jess. Listen to Psych Talk. Give us a review, a rate, a share, multiple comments, and connect with your teen in real life. Thanks, y'all, for dropping in, and we'll see y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye.